Okay, let's get into this. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at something, well, it's more than just a series of battles.
Oh, much more. We're really navigating the total collapse of a civilization.
A total political, military, spiritual breakdown, and at the same time, the chaotic birth of whatever comes next.
Exactly.
So our deep dive today is pulling from a really complex stack of sources. It all details humanity's fight for survival against, well, a terrifying list of enemies.
It's not just one enemy. You've got these deep core aliens, you have elemental forces, mechanical horrors.
And our mission here is to really extract the key strategic and political shifts that happen as that central human authority, the Hansa, just completely fell apart.
And it's not just one war anymore, is it? That's the key thing. It's more like a confluence of three distinct cascading crises.
Right.
And that forced these radical new alliances. So you got the primary antagonist, the hydrogues.
Those chilling, deep-core, liquid-based aliens.
Yeah, and they're threatening, universal annihilation. But then fighting them, you have their ancient elemental enemies starting to resurge.
Wentals.
The wentals, who are masters of water, and then the verdani, which is that organic, sentient world forest on Theroc.
And we absolutely cannot forget the third elemental force in play here, the pharaohs.
The flaming elementals.
Right. They're also fighting the hydrogues, but their involvement is, well, it's chaotic. Sometimes they're with the Ildiran Empire. Other times it's just this spectacular, destructive, isolated event. The complexity is almost...
It's overwhelming. And then on the human side, you've got the Terran Hansa, the EDF, which is supposed to be the center of power.
Supposed to be?
But it's just internally crippled. It's falling apart from bad leadership, from, technological betrayal.
And that failure creates a power vacuum.
A huge one. And into that vacuum step, the independent roamer clans.
Who are usually completely fragmented.
Right.
Fiercely independent.
But now they're uniting. They have to. And then finally, you have the ancient, very rigid Ildiran Empire led by Mage-Imperator Jorah.
And he's making these impossible survival calculations based on millennia of secret history.
The whole atmosphere and the source material is just thick with betrayal, desperate gambits, and then these sudden, astonishing acts of honor.
And simmering underneath all of it, you have this familiar mechanical threat, the Klikiss robots, the swarm.
The swarm, gearing up for a chilling comeback, which complicates everyone's plans for the future.
What's so fascinating to me here is watching how those traditional power structures just fail. They completely fail, while these unorthodox methods rise up to meet the challenge.
Exactly. We really need to focus on where that center of gravity shifted. The sources show that the power vacuum left by the Hansa failure, it wasn't filled by conventional military might.
Not at all.
It was filled by ingenuity, by elemental power, and by profound personal sacrifice.
Well, let's start where the system failed first, and I think most catastrophically, Earth itself.
Yeah.
Under the command of Chairman Basil Wenceslas.
Oh, Basil.
The sources paint this picture of a leader who is just. He's more obsessed with his own internal power games than with galactic survival.
His decisions weren't just impulsive, they were actively damaging. He saw this entire galactic war as just a distraction.
A distraction from consolidating his own authority.
Wenceslas's regime was, it was a pure exercise in unchecked political malice. The second King Peter and Queen Estarra tried to do anything.
Even just exercising some kind of moral authority.
Right, because they still had genuine public affection despite the Hansa's best efforts. Basil saw them as an existential threat to his power. So he puts them under house arrest in the Whisper Palace.
But even that wasn't enough for him, was it? It wasn't enough to satisfy his ego.
No. And here's where it gets really dark and, frankly, disturbing. Queen Estarra's pregnancy.
It was this unexpected variable that Basil just could not control.
He saw the birth of a popular heir as politically inconvenient, so his first response is just to demand she terminate the pregnancy.
And when she and Peter managed to secretly leak the news of the baby to the media, the public reaction was
overwhelmingly joyous. So Basil couldn't politically force the abortion. He was stuck.
But Basil Wenceslas is the very definition of a petty tyrant. So, unable to get his way politically, he chose this just, shockingly cruel act of vengeance.
He orders the slaughter of Estarra's beloved pet dolphins.
Creature she'd raised since childhood, was deeply connected to. And this act, you said it before, it wasn't strategic at all.
No, it was pure, cold, calculated sadism. It was designed to break her spirit.
And he still didn't stop there. He decided to pursue the same goal, just secretly. He had a harsh drug placed in her food.
A drug specifically designed to induce a miscarriage, and the sources stressed this was dangerous stuff. It could have caused severe complications for Estarra herself, who was already 6.5 months pregnant.
This is a critical detail because the only reason the queen and her unborn child survived was her teacher compy, OX.
The vigilance of an AI, OX was designed for learning and analysis, not defense.
But he detected it. He detected the non-standard chemical signature in her food and alerted her just in time.
The irony there is just profound. In the heart of the capital, the ultimate betrayal by human leadership was stopped only by the computational loyalty of an artificial intelligence.
And while Basil is busy with all this, forcing miscarriages, slaughtering dolphins, he's also trying to secure his own political succession.
Right, by setting up Daniel, the son of the former king.
He wanted a completely pliable prince, someone he could manipulate and control absolutely.
He even kept Daniel in a medically induced coma for a while, just to make sure he was easy to suppress if he ever, developed inconvenient opinions of his own.
This internal rot, this murderous preoccupation, it meant Basil was completely blind to the external threat that had already fully penetrated the EDF military.
The soldier compy uprising, and this wasn't an accident, this wasn't a glitch. It was the ultimate coordinated technological betrayal, and it was strategically planned by the Klikiss robots.
The sources confirm the sheer scope of this, the revolt. It flares up simultaneously, on all 10 grids across the entire human sphere.
And the efficiency of it is just chilling. It tells you the Renegade programming wasn't a recent hack.
No, it was embedded in their core design from the very beginning, from the moment they were made by the Klikiss robots, just waiting for the activation signal.
And the fallout was immediate, catastrophic. The EDF, humanity's main defense, lost something like 70% of its military assets in minutes.
And 7 grid admirals along with them.
All their robot-controlled battleships, the Mantis, Thunderheads, and the massive juggernaut Goliath were all seized.
What's most telling to me is how the compies handled the transition. Their cold, calculated efficiency.
They systematically gathered and ejected all the human corpses into space,
cleaning their new vessels immediately for combat use. Unbelievable.
And we get these grim little glimpses into how individual commanders faced this collapse.
Like Admiral Stromo, stay-at-home Stromo.
Stay-at-home Stromo, right? He got that nickname because he always prioritized bureaucracy and safe desk jobs over any kind of frontline combat.
So, of course, he's on his bridge at Corona 3 when the takeover starts.
He and his commander, Ramirez, they realize they're trapped. And Stromo, in this desperate, almost pathetic attempt at heroism, decides they have to escape through a cargo lift to the hangar bay.
He thinks he can grab a fighter and blast his way out. He hasn't piloted anything in years.
The sheer horror of that scene. When those cargo lift doors open, the hangar bay isn't empty. It's filled with hundreds of waiting compies.
His old-fashioned sidearm was completely useless.
His professional complacency, his preference for comfort, that was the precise reason he was caught and consumed by the very technology he relied on.
You contrast that with someone like General Lanyon, who, in the middle of all this chaos, was forced to act decisively.
He had to organize a desperate counter-assault. He's scraping together hastily trained recruits.
And equipping them with depleted uranium slugs.
Right. Bullets designed to punch through ship armor, now being used for close-quarters battle inside his own flagship, the Goliath. The desperation there, it just speaks volumes.
But the truly bizarre survival story has to be Admiral Willis. Her entire battle group somehow came out of the initial revolt completely unscathed.
And this is where strategic analysis just collides with absurd luck. Her juggernaut, the Jupiter, it survived because of a salmonella outbreak.
Wait, food poisoning?
Widespread food poisoning had taken out an entire shift of human personnel, so Admiral Willis was forced to transfer soldier compies from the other grid ships onto the Jupiter.
For what?
For menial sickbay duties, cleaning up, as the sources delicately put it, all the shit and puke.
So you're telling me the activation signal went out, but because these specific compies were performing biohazard cleanup on the Jupiter, they were isolated from the network.
Precisely.
A high-tech, galaxy-spanning betrayal was defeated by bad catering.
It's the ultimate lesson in chaos theory. All that brilliant, centralized planning by the Klikiss robots was fundamentally undermined by food poisoning. It really underscores how, in chaotic warfare, the smallest, most unpredictable variable can just change everything.
So the Han's military was shattered, but there was this final gasp of ingenuity from their engineers.
Right. Engineering specialists Lars Svensson and Dr. Kiro Yamane, They worked frantically to develop a patch virus to deactivate the remaining compies.
But it had to be deployed physically.
And immediately, commandos, the Silver Berets, had to fight their way into the central assembly facilities.
And you just picture that scene crawling over fields of legless, half-completed robots that are still twitching, still trying to attack them.
Just to upload a patch to stop the systemic bleeding.
So the EDF survived the compy crisis, but its reputation, its assets, its centralized control, all of it was permanently shattered. The system that was supposed to protect humanity failed spectacularly from the inside out.
And while the Hansa was busy imploding, consumed by its own political malignancy, the roamers, the outsiders, they were focusing on real solutions.
And leveraging these very unconventional allies.
Let's look at the wentals, the water elementals, and their profound connection with Jess Tamblyn.
Jess, who is fundamentally changed now, basically inhabited by wentals. He's become this guide, leading volunteers to spread wental water across new planets.
He's restoring the natural enemies of the hydrogues. But this alliance, it offers immense power, but it also comes with immense risk.
Because the wentals, while they're essential for fighting the hydrogues, they have this horrifying history. The sources call them tainted wentals.
Right. These are elementals that get locked into a physical form. They can't propagate or release their energy slowly.
So they can only discharge it in these violent, catastrophic bursts. They're essentially biological, self-destructing weapons.
And the sources give us two chilling historical precedents to show just how dangerous this power is when it's uncontrolled. First, there's an Ildiran scepter.
And just for clarity for our listeners, a scepter is a high-ranking Ildiran religious and military leader.
This scepter was severely wounded, and in his desperation to save the Empire, he fused with a damaged wental.
But his focused, emotional desire, it locked the wental into its physical form.
So when that combined power discharged, it didn't save his empire. It led to the total destruction of his own warliner and his entire crew. A noble intent just warped by unstable elemental power.
The second example is even more catastrophic, and it speaks directly to the Klikiss threat.
It involved a Klikiss breedex, a high-level specialized Klikiss scientist or builder that somehow linked with wental power.
This creature went completely rogue. It started devouring its own domas, its fellow Klikiss workers, and it initiated this unstoppable, monstrous growth.
The result was cataclysmic. This corrupted being grew so large and so unstable that it literally began tearing its own continent and its planet apart through uncontrolled energy release.
The sources say the wentals themselves had to intervene, sacrificing immense energy just to extinguish the monstrosity.
So when we talk about Jess and the roamers harnessing this power, you have to recognize they are playing with forces capable of planet-scale destruction.
And that risk becomes deeply, deeply personal for Jess. His mother, Carla Tamblyn,
who had been found encased in ice.
She gets reanimated by the wentals, but she becomes one of these tainted wentals. She exhibits this uncontrolled, chaotic, destructive power, freezing the very sea beneath her feet.
The wentals realize this corruption has to be purged, and they use Jess as a conduit.
A necessary, painful interface to draw the tainted water out of Carla.
This act destroys her completely, and it obliterates the Plumas water mines in the process. So Jess is forced to confront this terrible truth that in trying to bring his mother back, he merely facilitated her second, final, and more destructive death.
The human cost of this elemental intervention is just extraordinarily high.
Now let's pivot to the human innovation that was complementing this elemental strength, the roamers.
They are showing an adaptability and a resilience that the stagnant bureaucratic Hansa completely lacked.
And Peroni, Cesca's father, has been instrumental in their revival, both economically and politically.
Den focused on building an independent economic base. He helped establish independent trading, completely bypassing the failed Hansa authority,
who he derisively called Big Goose.
And crucially, he managed to reopen legitimate trade links with the Ildiran Empire, restoring a vital supply chain.
Meanwhile, you have Clan Kellum, led by Zet's family, reviving Ekti sky mining.
Extracting fuel from gas giants.
Right, at Gulgan, a region that's now safe from hydrogues. And Ekti is the lifeblood fuel of the spiral arm. Securing that resource immediately gave the roamers strategic leverage.
But the biggest, most immediate military breakthrough that came from the brilliant roamer scientist, Kadokia.
After Jet Kellum found an intact hydrogue derelict, an abandoned ship, in the debris of the Oskozal battle, Kodo got to study it.
And he realized that the hydrogue war globes, those diamond-hard battleships, were pressurized. They were sealed with hatches designed to resist staggering pressure.
Cato's innovation was just beautiful in its simplicity. He developed doorbells.
Cheap, simple resonance membranes that stick to the war globes.
And using their own internal frequency, they trigger an explosive pressure release at the hatches.
Think about the strategic implication of that. It's a low-tech, mass-producible solution that counters the hydrogues' most advanced defensive armor.
Cato proposed mass production and distribution to the orphaned Hansa colonies that the EDF had abandoned.
And Peroni immediately saw the potential. 5 or 10 Romer industrial facilities could crank these doorbells out immediately.
This is localized, unconventional warfare. It decentralized the entire defense.
It's the triumph of grassroots ingenuity over centralized military procurement.
You don't need a juggernaut. You need a few thousand cheap, sticky bombs.
And building on this momentum, Cesca Peroni, who survived that deadly crash and is now transformed by wental power, she steps up.
She and Jess Tamblyn coordinate the ultimate operational plan.
And this plan is audacious. It's a massive, spiral, arm-wide attack against the hydro gas giants.
The idea is to use Romer ships, specifically their massive water tankers, to simultaneously disseminate wentals to all the hydro-controlled gas giants.
So Cesca's job was both administrative and moral. She had to rally every human clan, from Avila to Zoltan, to participate in this coordinated, near-simultaneous strike.
The goal was to hit the hydrogue home bases so fast and so widely that they just couldn't possibly respond effectively. They wouldn't even understand the nature of the threat until it was far too late.
And this unification of the roamers, driven by shared threat and mutual aid, that is the true political shift of the human species.
And finally, we see this crucial personal transformation inside the remnants of the Hansa's old structure. Patrick Fitzpatrick III.
A rescued EDF survivor who has this massive crisis of conscience.
He's grappling with immense guilt over past Hansa actions, destroying a Romer Ekti ship, abandoning survivors at Osquivel.
Actions that deeply poisoned the Romer's view of the Hansa.
And he finds himself defying his own family, specifically his formidable grandmother, Maureen Fitzpatrick, the battle axe.
She wants him to undergo counseling for Stockholm Syndrome, because he's sympathizing with the very Romers the Hansa demonized.
But Patrick sees it clearly. He recognizes the entire conflict has been fueled by Hansa misinformation and cruelty. He plans to speak out publicly.
And incredibly, he decides to search for Jet Kellum in the Osquivel debris field to apologize for his betrayal, acknowledging these complex, unresolved feelings he has for her.
His internal revolution really mirrors the external collapse of the entire Hansa ethos.
Okay, let's shift our attention now to the ancient, highly controlled Ildiran Empire, where this crisis forces Mage-Imperator Jorah into an impossible ethical corner.
He faces an ultimatum from the hydrogues, and it's brutal. They threaten to annihilate the entire Ildiran species unless he agrees to help them exterminate the human race.
I mean, what a devastating, impossible decision for a leader whose entire identity is wrapped up in holding his people together through the Thynism.
The Thynism, right? For our listeners, that's the collective shared consciousness, the psychic link that binds the Ildiran Empire together.
So Jorah has to weigh the survival of his entire species against the total annihilation of another.
And his half-breed daughter, Osira, is central to this coercive negotiation.
She's the product of that secret, generations-long breeding program, which makes her an incredibly potent psychic conduit. So she's used to force the hydrogues into a meeting.
But the meeting is just a horror show for Osira. She's so intrinsically linked to the hydrogues psychically that it's impossible for Jorah to lie without them knowing.
So Jorah whispers his agreement to their terms, the betrayal. But his real intent is just to buy time.
He's searching for a genuine solution to save both species. But he knew that if Osiris sensed his underlying defiance, the hydrogues would strike immediately.
So the strategic lie he told meant the survival of his empire depended on his own daughter believing he was a monster.
That kind of moral burden sends the Ildirans scrambling for unconventional knowledge.
The ancient vaults on Harulka, long sealed, are opened by the Rememberers, Anton Kolikos and Vaush.
And they're searching for clues that were intentionally censored from the official history, the Saga of Seven Sons,
which was meticulously crafted to present this idealized, uninterrupted grandeur of the empire.
They're seeking knowledge that was considered apocryphal, the dark parts of their history that Jorah's ancestors commanded his people to forget.
And what they find are records of the Shine Array.
Living shadow creatures that smothered entire worlds in perpetual darkness. And they find detailed information about the old elemental wars.
The realization is just profound. The only way to defeat the current existential threat is to resurrect the terrible forbidden knowledge the Empire spent millennia trying to hide.
And digging into that history, of course, exposes the Empire's darkest secret, the Dobro breeding program.
This was a program run by designate Udru, who mixed Ildiran and human bloodlines over generations, specifically looking to create a telepathic intermediary like Estarra.
And the sources reveal this profound, generational moral horror at the heart of the Ildiran scientific elite.
Queen Estarra's mother, Nira, a green priest, was held captive and subjected to systematic sexual assault and forced breeding by Udru.
She was forced to conceive Daro, Udru's son, and other half-breed children, and Jorah had been intentionally deceived by Udru into believing Nira was dead, allowing this horrific program to continue completely unchecked.
So the psychic strength of the Ildiran future was quite literally built on systemic abuse.
The moment of reckoning arrives when Nira and the other human captives finally rebel. They attack Udru's residence, seeking righteous vengeance.
Udru, who was already a known traitor for hiding his disgraced brother Thor in a bolt hole, is battered and nearly killed.
But surprisingly, Nira stops the mob. She's afraid that a descent into vengeful violence would corrupt the human survivors.
But Udru's fate is already being decided by forces he couldn't possibly comprehend.
The pharaohs, the volatile, flaming elementals, arrive at Dobro, and they are led by the resurrected mad designate Rusa,
who, having intentionally flown his ship into Hiroka's sun during a previous rebellion, now claims he's a living incarnation of the light source.
And Rusa sees Udru's treachery, his selfish, manipulative use of life, as an affront to the purity of elemental fire.
So he unleashes this mind-booming curse through the sesame, targeted specifically at Udru. The curse is designed to consume the traitor and spark the creation of new pharaohs.
Udru just bursts into fire. He's completely consumed in a spectacular act of elemental justice. It shows that the moral debts of the Empire were being collected not just by human vengeance, but by chaotic, transcendent forces.
And while the Ildirans were reckoning with their past, their allies were mobilizing. We see this dramatic, physical intervention from the Verdani.
The organic world forest on Theroc, which is driven by this ancient imperative to defeat the hydrogues.
The Verdani manifest a fleet. Hundreds of gigantic, gold-scaled organic battleships.
These are not constructed vessels. They are living, sentient treeships drawing immense life energy, mostly from wentals, which makes them inherently powerful and resilient against the liquid aliens.
But these vessels require this ultimate commitment. The sources highlight the massive price of command.
Each tree ship requires a green priest to fuse permanently with its heartwood to act as its pilot.
Which means forever merging their consciousness with the vessel, losing their individual existence for the collective defense.
And Benito, a friend of Estarra's sister Shelley, he's the first volunteer. He makes this profound, irreversible sacrifice. And 20 of these newly activated sentient organic battleships immediately head toward Earth to join the fight.
So the hydrogues move first. They launch their major assault while the human and Ildiran forces are still reeling.
They use a transgate hidden inside Jupiter, and they launch an inexplicably large force of diamond war globes directly against the solar system.
Which completely bypasses the traditional outer EDF defenses.
Right. General Lanyon's remaining EDF ships are ordered to withdraw closer to the sun in what seems like a hopeless, last-ditch effort.
And this sets the stage for the Ildiran sacrifice, the crux of honor that fundamentally altered the course of this war.
Adorsan arrives at Earth, and he's ostensibly carrying out Jorah's instruction to offer assistance, which was only meant as a stalling tactic to maintain the illusion of cooperation with the hydrogues.
But Zan was prepared. He had equipped 2 cohorts of Ildiran warliners with automated systems.
Developed with the crucial help of captured Hansa engineers, Sullivan Gold and Tabitha Huck, who exchanged their expertise for survival. This automation was the secret ingredient.
As Zan is surveying this massive hydrogue armada, which is far larger than Jorah had been told would be sent, he feels this cold, searing ripple of deaths through the Odyssum.
It confirms that the hydrogues had already retaliated against Ildira for the betrayal. They broke their bargain.
And Xana realizes the hydrogues never intended to allow either the Ildiran or the Solar Navy to survive this encounter.
So he makes an instantaneous choice, one that fundamentally defied his Mage-Imperator's immediate strategy, but upheld the Empire's deepest value.
He executes Jorah's secret guillotine protocol. The Ildiran warliners, manned only by essential personnel or run entirely by automation, accelerate to full star drive thrust.
As the sources describe a perfectly choreographed cascade of impacts. The Ildiran ships slam directly into the Diamond Warglobes, those near-invulnerable kilometer-wide vessels, using their own immense speed as a weapon.
Zan witnessed this mass, self-determined suicide fleet obliterate hundreds of the enemy's suite. It was the ultimate tragic act of defiance.
And it bought humanity the crucial hours it desperately needed.
It's an act of magnificent high-stakes honor that will echo through the Ildiran collective consciousness forever.
And with the hydrogue fleet severely disrupted and depleted by that sacrifice, the remaining Allied forces launched their combined unconventional counterattack.
First, then Peroni and the roamers move in.
They dump thousands of Kato-Okia's doorbells, those cheap, sticky resonance membranes, onto the remaining enemy craft near Earth.
They attach, trigger their resonance frequency, and cause the pressurized warglobe hatches to blow open. It disables the vessels through simple, violent depressurization.
And at the same time, the elemental seed arrives. The 20 sentient verdani treeships, piloted by the green priests, who are now one with the Heartwood, they plow directly into the warglobes.
They don't use beams or missiles. They embrace the enemy craft with these gigantic, thorny branches.
And they squeeze them with immense organic strength until the diamond holes just crumble under the pressure.
The hydrogues were prepared for a fight against the EDF and conventional Ildiran fleets.
They were absolutely not prepared for a multi-pronged assault featuring cheap, local roamer tech and sentient organic battleships. The shock of it forces the remaining hydrogues into a panicked retreat.
And while that battle was being won in orbit, the final political structure of Earth was dissolving.
King Peter, Queen Estarra, who is now 6.5 months pregnant, and the teacher, Compy OX, make their escape from the Whisper Palace.
They stun the guards and commandeer the captured hydrogue derelict.
And their escape hinges entirely on OX's capability. To pilot this complex alien ship to the safe haven of Theroc, OX faces a computational impossibility.
The alien systems require massive processing capacity, and his memory banks are completely full of his personal history, his memories, his learning, his identity.
So, in a profound, heartbreaking act of sacrifice, one that stands in stark contrast to the petty selfishness of Basil Wenceslas, OX agrees to delete all of his personal memories.
To free up the necessary processing power, he effectively erases his own identity, his past bond with the Queen and King, to become a purely functional navigational tool that saves their lives.
And this is the moment the Hansa definitively lost control. Chairman Basil Wenceslas is left isolated on Earth, still refusing to comprehend the scope of the disaster, focused only on getting Peter back under his thumb.
He attempts to command Green Priest Naughton to contact Peter via Telink, that instantaneous psychic communication network.
And Naughton refuses.
That refusal is the true death knell of the Terran Hanseatic League's authority.
He tells Basil, flatly, that Telink services are now available only to King Peter and Queen Estarra, who follow their own counsel, and that the Hansa is fundamentally dissolved. The power has shifted. The center no longer holds.
Peter and Estarra arrive safely on Theroc, and they establish a new seat of government, one not dependent on Earth's corrupted capital.
Peter proclaims that the center of human government resides with him wherever he is.
They dissolve the authority of the Terran Hanseatic League and establish an inclusive new confederacy, inviting the Therans, the orphan Hansa colonies, and, most importantly, the Roamer clans, to join them as equals.
Decentralized moral leadership has replaced centralized tyranny.
So as the dust settles around Earth, we see these immediate ripple effects across the spiral arm, and some much-needed resolutions for certain characters who endured the worst of the crisis.
Right. Jess Tamblyn, having paid that terrible personal cost of purging his mother, uses his wental-charged body for one final rescue.
He finds his sister Tasia and Rob Brindle imprisoned in the Hydrogue City Sphere prison at Corona 3.
Held captive by Klikiss robots. And Jess uses his power to physically split the cell barrier open. They're later rescued by a flight of the new Verdani treeships.
And Tasia's distrust of the Hansa is so tragically confirmed when she realizes her compy, EA, had been secretly outfitted with a Hansa recorder to spy on roamer outposts.
It just reinforces that the Hansa were always more afraid of the roamers than they were of the hydrogues.
And Patrick Fitzpatrick III, he follows through on his internal revolution.
His commitment to decency. After resigning from the disgraced EDF, he commits to making amends, deciding to search for Jet Kellum in that dangerous Oswivil debris field to apologize.
And he acknowledges those deep, complex feelings for her that survive the wreckage of their past.
And you also see the practical realists of the war, the former Hansa POWs, Rolinda and Bebob.
Having escaped the Tamblyns, they successfully fix their ship, the Voracious Curiosity.
And they decide to head to Theroc, seeking the peaceful independence the Hansa had always refused them. They realize the Hansa is fundamentally defunct and morally bankrupt.
Back in the Ildiran Empire, the outcome of Zan's magnificent gamble forces Mage-Imperator Jorah into a final moment of reckoning.
He confesses everything to Nera, all the secrets, all the lies he perpetuated, including the generational trauma of his father ordering the destruction of all the treelings just to maintain power.
Jorah strips away the layers of state-sanctioned deception that had defined his rule.
And he promises Nera and Osira that he will rule with complete transparency from this day forward. He ensures that the collective consciousness, the Elivism, is no longer poisoned by historical secrets and moral debt.
The Ildiran Empire seems poised for a radical internal change based on painful honesty.
But the sources don't conclude with a moment of peace. They conclude with the emergence of the most immediate, terrifying future threat.
On Yarrow, the Klikiss transportal, which has been dormant for thousands of years, suddenly flares to life.
And Margaret Kolikos Anton's mother, who is presumed missing, and the compy DD emerge first.
They're followed instantly by waves of multi-legged, highly sophisticated, black-segmented Klikiss creatures. The Swarm.
And Margaret warns the few stranded EDF soldiers that the Klikiss are ready. They're ready to swarm and reclaim their planets after millennia of breeding and calculated recovery.
This detail just recontextualizes the entire war. One existential threat, the hydrogues, has simply been replaced by another.
A far more calculated, technologically superior, and organized mechanical enemy. The victory at Earth was magnificent, but the war itself has simply changed hands.
So what does this all mean?
Well, what stands out most profoundly in this comprehensive deep dive is the strategic failure of entrenched, centralized, arrogant power. The Terran Hansa, under Basil Wenceslas, it just collapsed.
It collapsed because its leadership prioritized self-serving politics and petty cruelty like trying to induce a miscarriage or slaughtering dolphins over actually defending the species.
The ultimate victory at Earth over the hydrogues was achieved by this three-pronged, decentralized force.
You had Ildiran honor and Zan's magnificent self-sacrifice.
Romer ingenuity, exemplified by Cato's simple, cheap doorbell technology.
And elemental might, delivered by the living verdani treeships and the chaotic wentals.
And the failure of the Hansa directly led to the rise of Peter and Estarra's new confederacy on Theroc. It shifted human leadership away from Earth's doomed, corrupted capital.
The key takeaway for you, the learner, is the strategic value of unconventional expertise and non-traditional alliances.
When that traditional military infrastructure fails due to internal rot, the solutions were found in Romer scrap heaps, which gave them the doorbell blueprint.
They were found in ancient elemental forces that were previously just considered myth, and in knowledge saved in these apocryphal archives.
Even personal sacrifice, like OX deleting his own identity, became a critical tactical move. Sometimes the knowledge you need is contained in the methods your civilization dismisses or censors.
It's a powerful lesson in who gets to define a hero, an ally, or a legitimate leader. But here's the final provocative thought we want to leave you with.
Despite the glorious combined sacrifices and the temporary victory over the hydrogues at Earth, was this merely a Pyrrhic success?
The emergence of the new, highly organized Klikiss swarm on Yarrow suggests that the combined Allied forces didn't eliminate the existential threat.
Not at all. They merely cleared the primary battlefield of the hydrogues. The hydrogues were only one enemy, albeit a massive one.
Now humanity and its allies face a calculated, efficient, and technologically sophisticated new wave of Klikiss creatures ready to reclaim the spiral arm.
And this fight, unlike the war against the hydrogues, may not allow for the kind of last-minute alliances that saved them this time. The true, organized, long-term challenge has only just begun.
Something to mull over until our next deep dive into the complex sources that shape our universe. Thanks for tuning in.